Now this is alarming. Nearly half of the United States population has high blood pressure. That's more than 122 million people, according to the American Heart Association report from 2023. In this lesson, I'm going to share with you the absolute worst advice your doctor is probably giving you about your high blood pressure, the actual root cause of high blood pressure that your doctor is missing, why salt and sodium is not the issue, the best foods and supplements for high blood pressure, and so much more. The worst advice your doctor is giving you about your high blood pressure is that you are consuming too much salt. This false belief has been debunked through numerous scientific studies and research many years ago. And this belief that high salt, sodium diets cause high blood pressure is from one study a very long time ago. It originates from French scientists more than 100 years ago who based their findings on only 6 patients. The truth is, high quality salt is vital for health and even normalizing your blood pressure levels. When you have adequate levels of sodium and salt, you have proper hydration. You support your adrenal function. It enhances nutrient absorption. Salt balances the fluids in your body, regulates nerves and muscle function, and maintains the acid-base balance inside of your body. For people who do a low-carb, keto diet, or carnivore diet, getting quality salt is actually even more important because you have lowered insulin through your diet, and when you do that, you lose a lot of salt. So for you doing low carb, keto, or carnivore, getting quality salt is even extra vital. So for those of you watching or listening who do a low carbohydrate, keto, or carnivore diet, getting quality salt is actually really important. What's crazy to me is that the research actually shows that salt supports your cardiovascular system. Salt helps to reduce cravings. Salt balances your electrolyte levels, and salt does not raise blood pressure levels. Now, of course, there are some rare exceptions with people who have salt sensitivity, and you can test your DNA to see if that is you. That is a small percentage of the population. For most people, salt is not the culprit. It is something else. So what is it that causes high blood pressure, and why do you have high blood pressure levels? Here's the root cause: high blood sugar and high insulin levels. When you're eating a diet that's high in carbohydrates, whether it's processed carbs like sugar or even whole foods carbs, but you're eating it in excess and snacking and eating frequently, you're going to have several blood sugar and insulin spikes. When this happens over time, high levels of blood sugar in your body strips a very important gaseous molecule called nitric oxide from your body, specifically from your blood vessels. When you strip nitric oxide from your blood vessels, it creates something called vasoconstriction. This is where your blood vessels close and constrict. When this happens, your heart has to pump harder for the body to do its job. As a result, your blood pressure rises. It's all because of this depletion in nitric oxide caused by high levels of blood sugar, high levels of insulin. Now, it's going to happen with insulin first. You might be testing your blood sugar levels. You might be even testing your hemoglobin A1C, which is the 3-month average of your blood sugar levels. And let's say that looks normal. And you're thinking, well, Ben, I have high blood pressure, but my fasting blood sugars look fine. My hemoglobin A1C also looks fine. I don't think that's the cause. Well, here's the hidden thing here. It's happening. Your insulin levels are most likely high. And some of the studies are suggesting that you could have high levels of insulin for an average of 6 to 14 years until the fasting blood sugars and overall blood sugars shift. That is insane. That is why the most important test you can take right now for your metabolism and to assess if this is your problem is a fasting insulin blood test. This is a very cheap test that you could pay out of pocket or work through insurance, but you want to see your fasting insulin between 3 and 7, ideally anywhere in the single digits. For your blood sugar levels, I'll give you the optimal blood sugar levels you want to hit if you track it. And there are a couple ways to track your blood sugar levels. You could track it with a finger prick machine or a continuous glucose monitor. You want your fasting blood sugar levels to be between 60 and 90 milligrams per deciliter. If you're in that range and your insulin levels are in single digits, you probably have reversed your high blood pressure levels. In regards to your hemoglobin A1C, you want that to be at 5.2% or less. And I'll drop links for the continuous glucose monitor I use and recommend, and the finger prick for glucose that I recommend from Keto Mojo in the notes down below. So now that we understand the cause, now that we understand it is not salt and sodium, let's discuss 5 ways to naturally lower high blood pressure levels. These 5 tips have 2 main things in common. The first thing is that it lowers your blood sugar and insulin levels. The second thing, it raises nitric oxide levels in your body. When we can get your nitric oxide levels increased, then it vasodilates your blood vessels, which expands them, which means your heart doesn't have to work as hard and your blood pressure levels normalize. So the first step here is to replace foods that spike blood sugar, spike insulin with foods that give you a healthy glucose and insulin response. When we look at the 3 macronutrients out there, protein, carbohydrates, and fat. As you can see on this chart I'm showing here on the screen, and for those listening on the podcast, I'll explain it to you. When we look at the blood insulin levels from eating 3 of the different macronutrients here, it is by far the carbohydrates that spike blood sugar and insulin the most. Protein, as you can see, has a very minimal to moderate response for blood insulin, and fat barely even spikes insulin. It barely moves the dial on insulin. Therefore, we understand we want to consume more fat, more protein, less carbohydrates. So the first step here is to get your total carbohydrates under 50 grams total per day. Here's a list of, I'm going to give you a list of healthy, and I'm putting that in quotation marks, carbohydrates that actually spike blood sugar, spike insulin, and raise your blood pressure levels. Oats and oatmeal, cereal, all bread, grains, fruit and fruit juices, quinoa, white rice and brown rice, potatoes and sweet potatoes, legumes, which include beans, peanuts, lentils, and chickpeas. What you want to do is replace those foods with the following: cauliflower rice, squash rice, cabbage rice, eggs, red meat like beef and lamb, seafood, small fatty fish like sardines, mackerel, anchovies, salmon, herring, organic poultry, and organic pastured pigs. By making this simple swap, you're going to increase your protein and fat, decrease your carbs, and by default, lower blood sugar, low insulin, and then also lower blood pressure levels. And you can track your total carbohydrate intake by using free apps out there. There's one that I use that's free over at Cronometer.com/KetoCamp. I'll drop a link for it down below. The second step in your protocol is to eat these 5 foods proven by science to lower blood pressure levels. The first food is extra virgin olive oil. Research suggests that a diet high in monounsaturated fatty acids, such as olive oil, avocados, macadamia nuts, may lead to improvements in insulin resistance, fat loss, including overall weight loss, versus diets higher in polyunsaturated fats. This happens through increased fat oxidation rates. Olive oil shows promising health benefits, which include anti-diabetic effects, improving insulin sensitivity, and lowering blood pressure levels. And I have a ton of studies which I'll share in the notes down below for you. But you want to make sure it's the right olive oil. Most olive oil, unfortunately, at the typical grocery store is not high quality olive oil. It's either been sitting out on the shelf getting artificial light, oxidizing the olive oil, or it's cut with an inflammatory seed oil. So you want to make sure if you're buying olive oil, which I do recommend you do to lower your blood pressure levels, you want to make sure it's in a dark glass bottle, it's organic, extra virgin, and even better, it's first harvest pressed. When it's first harvest pressed, it has more of these polyphenols and antioxidants and oleocanthols that lower inflammation and lower blood pressure levels. Personally, I'm subscribed to the Olive Oil Club. They have the cleanest, best tasting, healthiest olive oil in the world, and you could get a $39 bottle from the Fresh Pressed Olive Oil Club for just $1 by going to KetoCampOliveOil.com. I'll drop that link down below. The second food to lower blood pressure is avocados. One of the key human studies on avocado consumption and insulin resistance is a 12-week randomized control trial that examined the effects of daily avocado intake on cardiometabolic risk factors. This study involved overweight or obese adults with insulin resistance and high blood pressure levels, and they found that regular consumption of avocado improved markers of insulin sensitivity and blood pressure levels. And I'll drop a link for that study down below. The cool thing about avocados is that it tastes great and it also has a lot of potassium, and we'll talk about the importance of potassium for high blood pressure a little bit later. The third food for high blood pressure is wild-caught salmon. Several human studies have examined the effects of salmon consumption on insulin resistance and high blood pressure levels. One key study involving an 8-week randomized controlled trial where participants at risk for type 2 diabetes and high blood pressure levels consumed salmon fish protein daily. While the study primarily aimed to assess glucose tolerance, the results actually showed no measurable differences in insulin and fasting glucose. But when we look at other studies out there looking at the whole fish, instead of isolating the protein of the fish, those studies show promising effects, lowering insulin, lowering blood pressure, and overall blood sugar levels and inflammation. And I'll drop those studies down below. So I always tell my students, my Keto Camp Academy students, aim to eat fatty fish, wild-caught salmon, 1 to 2 times per week, especially if you have high blood pressure levels. And one more note on salmon. This study observed that regular consumption of salmon reduced lipid markers related to inflammation and improved insulin signaling in individuals with coronary heart disease. Over the course of 8 weeks, participants who consumed salmon showed a decrease in harmful lipids, potentially improving insulin sensitivity and inflammation. The next food to lower blood pressure levels is eggs with the yolk. The research shows that whole egg consumption, including the yolk, may provide benefits on insulin sensitivity and blood pressure levels, particularly in individuals with metabolic syndrome or type 2 diabetes. In a 12-week randomized controlled trial, participants consuming 2 eggs per day showed improvements in insulin sensitivity as measured by the HOMA-IR test. The study found that fasting glucose levels and insulin resistance significantly decreased in the group consuming eggs compared to those who did not include eggs in their diet. Another study showed that consuming 3 whole eggs per day as part of a low carbohydrate diet led to improvements in lipoprotein profiles and greater reductions in insulin resistance compared to a yolk-free substitute. And the last food to lower blood pressure levels is grass-fed ghee. Ghee is clarified butter, and research on grass-fed ghee suggests it can be beneficial for managing insulin resistance and high blood pressure levels, particularly due to its content of butyrate, which is a short-chain fatty acid. Butyrate has been shown to help regulate insulin levels and reduce inflammation, both of which are crucial for improving your blood pressure. Studies in animal models have demonstrated that butyrate can prevent and reverse diet-induced insulin resistance and high blood pressure levels. And in human studies, ghee made from grass-fed butter is rich in conjugated linoleic acid, which has been associated with improvements in lipid profiles and insulin sensitivity. So you want to aim to get 1 to 2 tablespoons of grass-fed ghee each day. If you're looking for a quality resource for wild-caught seafood, grass-fed meat, high-quality animal-based products, I personally use Wild Pastures, and you can get a special deal from them by going to ketocampmeat.com. I'll drop that link down below. The third step in your protocol is to eliminate snacking and practice time-restricted feeding. I don't know if you knew this or not, but the average American eats 17 to 23 times per day. That might sound like a made-up stat, but that is actually a patient population study done by my colleague, Dr. Don Klum. And they're not necessarily sitting down at a table and eating a full meal 17 to 23 times per day, but the average person is grazing and snacking all day long. Every time you do that, you spike glucose and insulin, you strip nitric oxide, and you raise your blood pressure levels. So the first step here, no snacking in between meals. The second step is to practice time-restricted feeding. In other words, intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting improves blood pressure levels through several mechanisms. One of them is the weight loss that occurs from fasting. This study showed after 5 weeks of controlled diets, early time-restricted feeding resulted in improved insulin levels and sensitivity, beta cell responsiveness, this is your body's ability to produce insulin, plus it showed improved levels of blood pressure and oxidative stress among pre-diabetic men. A systematic review studying the effects of intermittent fasting diets in the general population found decreased body mass index, decreased fasting glucose levels, and improved insulin sensitivity. All of that helps to lower blood pressure levels. So the schedule you want to follow is an early time-restricted feeding schedule. It's an 18-6. What do I mean by that? This means out of a 24-hour period, for 18 hours, you're fasted. What can you have during a fast? Just your water, coffee, tea, your supplements, no food for 18 hours. Then you have a 6-hour eating window. During the 6-hour eating window, you want to consume the foods I outlined earlier and make sure you're not going over 50 total grams of carbs for that day in that 6-hour eating window. But you want to do this with early time restricted feeding, meaning the best format here, I know this may be difficult for some people's schedule, but the best format would be to have breakfast and lunch and skip dinner. Eating at 8 a.m. as your first meal, maybe having something at 10 a.m. and you're done eating by 2 p.m. And then after 2 p.m. you're fasting all the way until 8 a.m. the next day. Now, if that's difficult for you to follow because you eat dinner with the family, then you can mix it up and skip breakfast and have dinner. But the goal is every single day to be fasted for 18 hours and to eat for 6 hours. During the 18 hours of the fast, every hour insulin drops, inflammation drops. And what also happens? Blood pressure drops as well. It's one of the quickest ways to lower your blood pressure levels. Now, I should have said this in the beginning. This is not medical advice, and if you're on blood pressure medication, it is very important to speak with your doctor and work with your doctor before you start this protocol. Talk to your doctor about the protocol, because as you get healthy and follow this protocol, you're going to naturally lower your blood pressure levels. And if you're already taking medication to lower your blood pressure levels, then your blood pressure levels can drop too low. So just keep that in mind. And one more thing with fasting, as you do the 18-6, maybe for a couple of weeks, then I would incorporate a 24-hour water fast. It is a great way to get even more results from your fasting schedule. And how this works is once per week, you go 24 hours without food. For example, if you're done eating, let's say Sunday at 2 p.m., you continue fasting until Monday at 2 p.m., being in a fasted state for 24 hours. You do that once per week. The fourth tip is to consider proper supplementation. There are 2 key nutrients that you can get in supplements that have been shown to lower blood pressure levels. The first one is taking a high-quality nitric oxide supplement. As I mentioned earlier, nitric oxide is really important for vasodilating, expanding your blood vessels so your heart doesn't have to work as hard, lowering your blood pressure levels. Nitric oxide is a signaling molecule that helps the smooth muscle cells in the blood vessel walls relax. When these cells relax, the blood vessels widen, allowing blood to flow more easily and reducing the resistance within the vessels. This decreased resistance leads to lower blood pressure levels. Besides lowering blood pressure levels, increased nitric oxide can improve blood flow to the organs and tissues, support healthy endothelial function, which is the inner lining of your blood vessels, and potentially reduce inflammation. Just make sure you're using the right nitric oxide supplement. There's a lot of bogus stuff out there for nitric oxide, beetroot powder, L-arginine. A lot of the stuff out there does not work and actually can be downright dangerous. And I've done a lot of research on this topic. I've interviewed Dr. Nathan Bryan, a world-renowned researcher on nitric oxide. The one I use personally, even though I don't have high blood pressure levels, but the one I use on my students as well, is the same product that I'm referring to. And that's this one that I'm holding up right here. It's called N101 nitric oxide lozenges. You just put it in your mouth, let it dissolve, do it in the morning, do it at night. The cool thing about this product is that if you have high blood pressure levels, it lowers it. If you have normal blood pressure levels, it doesn't lower it. It keeps it at homeostasis. I'll put a link and a coupon code for this product. The next nutrient from supplements that lower blood pressure levels is potassium. Potassium supplements can help to lower blood pressure levels by balancing sodium levels and directly influencing blood vessel function. Here's a breakdown on how this works. Potassium helps the kidneys excrete excess sodium, reducing fluid retention and lowering blood pressure levels. Potassium directly affects blood vessel walls, encouraging relaxation of the smooth muscle cells within them. This, just like the nitric oxide, vasodilates your blood vessels, allows your heart to relax, and lowers your blood pressure levels. Beyond blood pressure, potassium supports overall health by helping regulate heartbeat, maintaining muscle function, and reducing the risk of stroke. So yes, you can get potassium from foods. One of my favorite foods, actually we mentioned it earlier, is avocados. One Hass avocado has about 800 milligrams of potassium. But personally, I tell my students that have high blood pressure, I recommend this product, which is Designs for Health K+2 potassium. One capsule is 300 milligrams, and they typically take 4 capsules per day. And I'll drop a link for this in the notes down below. The fifth tip here might be the most surprising And I hope you don't poo-poo this and you really do this because it really works. And that is going to be breathing through your nose and humming, singing, and laughing. Let's start with breathing through your nose part. When you are a mouth breather, when you are constantly breathing through your mouth throughout the day, and especially as you sleep at night, you actually deplete nitric oxide in your body. When we breathe through our nose, air passes over the nasal passages, which naturally produces nitric oxide. This nitric oxide is then carried into the lungs, where it aids in the dilation of airways and blood vessels. By relaxing blood vessel walls, nitric oxide improves oxygen absorption and circulation, supporting blood pressure and overall cardiovascular health. When we breathe through the mouth, air bypasses the nasal passages, preventing nitric oxide from entering the airways and lungs. And this deprives the body of nitric oxide. So you want to be conscious throughout the day to breathe through your nose. Obviously, when you're speaking, like I am right now, you're breathing through your mouth. But when you're not speaking throughout the day, close your mouth, breathe through your nose. When you're walking outside, try your best to breathe through your nose. And at the very least, at night when you're sleeping, definitely breathe through your nose. So many people are mouth breathers. They wake up in the morning, their mouth is dry. They've totally depleted nitric oxide in their body. I simply use a mouth strip on my mouth when I go to bed, and it trains my body to breathe through my nose. I use the ones from Somnifix. I recommend you use it at night as well. I'll put a link for it down below in the notes. It turns out that humming and singing can also significantly boost nitric oxide levels in the body. When you hum or sing, the vibrations from sound production stimulate the lining of the sinuses, which in turn increase nitric oxide production. This vibration allows for a higher concentration of nitric oxide to be released into the nasal cavity. Studies have shown that humming and singing can remarkably increase nitric oxide levels in the body, and it happens really fast. The nitric oxide generated by humming and singing enters the respiratory system, promoting vasodilation, remember the widening of your blood vessels, in the airways and blood vessels of the lungs. This can also help with your immune system. Nitric oxide has strong antimicrobial properties, helping to reduce the risk of respiratory infections by inhibiting the growth of pathogens in the nasal passages and lungs. So yes, hum throughout the day. Listen to your favorite band, which, by the way, the greatest rock band in the world is The Killers. Go listen to The Killers and sing to them. That'll raise your nitric oxide levels. And the last part here is laughter therapy. Laughing triggers the release of endorphins and reduces cortisol, the stress hormone, which helps relax the blood vessels and improve blood flow. Studies have found that laughter can have a direct impact on blood pressure by lowering both systolic and diastolic readings. So how do you do it? Simple. Laugh. I want you to do this with me right now. I know this might sound weird. You might be at work. Maybe you're in your car listening to the podcast, or you're at home alone. But let's laugh together. Let's laugh and raise nitric oxide. There we go. We just raised our nitric oxide levels. You see how easy that was? Okay, now let's get to the most common questions I get asked about this topic that some of you have submitted. First question is this: are there any other ways to naturally raise nitric oxide levels and lower blood pressure? Yes, there are many other ways. Exercise, movement is a fantastic way, especially if you do it outside, which brings me to the next tip. Sunlight, sunshine, great for nitric oxide. Red light therapy, called photobiomodulation, great for nitric oxide. Sauna, great for nitric oxide as well, which lowers blood pressure. All these mechanisms and tips lower blood pressure. You could also do some deep breathing exercises, get your body in a relaxed parasympathetic state. Meditation and mindfulness can do this, and really any physical relaxation technique can raise nitric oxide and lower blood pressure levels. You could also lower blood pressure and increase nitric oxide by limiting caffeine and alcohol. These substances can elevate blood pressure temporarily and may increase stress and anxiety if consumed excessively. What else can we do for high blood pressure? Quality sleep. As I mentioned earlier, you want to make sure you have a mouth tape, breathe through your nose, but high quality sleep lowers cortisol, lowers inflammation, lowers insulin, and lowers your blood pressure levels. This video is not about sleep, but just make sure you're getting quality sleep. It's not so much about the quantity, but it is about the quality of the sleep. And the last piece of research here that I found on high blood pressure is actually eating dark chocolate. Now, I know if you do carnivore, you can't really do this, but if you're not a carnivore, you can do this. But some of the research suggests that dark chocolate, 70% or higher, contains flavonoids, which promote nitric oxide production. A study published in the Journal of American Medical Association found that moderate amounts of dark chocolate can effectively reduce blood pressure. I would have it during the day because it sometimes has caffeine, and I wouldn't do too much, just a small piece, less than an ounce. So there you have it. That's the full protocol. I'm excited to hear about your results. If you enjoyed this lesson, you're going to love a recent video I just published on 5 bizarre symptoms of vitamin D deficiency. Check out this clip. I'll see you in that next video. Goodbye.
2 things. I know this person is in the family. This person is a practitioner. And they told me that if they wanted to get a license to practice practitioner and doctor or whatever it is, because they got to take these tests to pass to be able to get a diploma or a degree to be a doctor or a practitioner. They all know that all they have to do, if they want to get it without taking a test, or if they can't pass the test multiple times, they pay a huge amount of money and they get their certifications. Now tell me if that's a doctor worth of shit that you want to go see. This person I'm talking about took 5 times to pass. And this person said they were not going to do that. They wouldn't. This person would not say that if it wasn't the case, and I believe this person 100%. And then number 2, in this video, he was talking about breathing through your nose for a lot of good benefits. I know that's good too because I was on a CPAP machine for many years, and you have to breathe through your nose. And I'm going to tell you right now, you woke up refreshed and feeling great. And I don't sleep with one now, but every once in a while I'll sleep with my mouth open, and I feel like I really didn't get a lot of rest. And then when I sleep with my nose, breathe through my nose, I feel better. So yeah, the guy's right. I mean, I trust him more than any doctor. You know, I'm sure there's some good doctors out there, but the bad ones make him look like shit. Hey, subscribe, hit the like button. See you.